Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Pope Francis calls for an end to the war in Ukraine, saying the world is suffering from a famine of peace. 3 major non-governmental organizations stopped work in Afghanistan after women were banned by the Taliban. Criminal Court of Maldives finds former President Abdullah Yameen guilty of corruption and money laundering. My name is Okpayemuni. Pope Francis has used his Christmas message to call for an end to the war in Ukraine, saying the world is suffering from a famine of peace. In his 10th Christmas blessing, he said people should look beyond the shallow holiday glitter and help the homeless, immigrants, refugees, and the poor. The Pope spoke from the central balcony of St. Peter Basilica to tens of thousands of people on the square below. In an apparent message to Russian President Vladimir Putin, he called on the Lord to enlighten the minds of those who have the power to silence the thunder of weapons and put an immediate end to the senseless war. Francis also called for a resumption of dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians in the Holy Land, the place of Jesus' birth. He again condemned the use of food as a weapon of war, saying the war in Ukraine had put millions at risk of famine, mentioning Afghanistan and countries in the Horn of Africa. In the meantime, Russian President Vladimir Putin has insisted Moscow is ready to negotiate to end the war, but accused Ukraine and the West of refusing to compromise. The Russian president told state television that he was ready to negotiate with everyone involved about acceptable solutions. His comments are unlikely to represent a real move forward, as it appears Russia is still unwilling to withdraw its troops from Ukraine, something that Kiev has said is a precondition to returning to the negotiating table. Mr. Putin said he believes Russia was acting in the right direction and defending its national interests. Moscow has insisted its so-called special military operation is aiming to protect Russian-speaking people in Ukraine. However, Ukraine and the West say the purpose of the invasion was to take control of the country. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged his people to persevere in the face of Russian attacks as the country celebrates Christmas. In a defiant speech, he said freedom comes at a high price, but slavery has an even higher price. Russia's missile and drone attacks have left millions of Ukrainians without power, eating and running water. Yesterday, Russian airstrikes killed 10 people in Ukraine's southern Kherson city. The regional authorities said another 68 people were injured and called on local residents to urgently donate blood. Describing Russia as a terrorist country, Mr. Zelensky accused the Russian troops of killing for the sake of intimidation and pleasure. Meanwhile, Ukrainians woke up on Christmas Day to the sound of air raid sirens. Officials said sirens have been heard across all Ukrainian regions, but there have been no reports of damage yet. But despite the conflict, continuing images from Ukraine's capital show some Ukrainians celebrating Christmas Day. Christmas is usually celebrated on the 7th of January in Ukraine, but some people are holding festivities today instead to break from Russian tradition. Soldiers and civilians were seen taking pictures of a Christmas tree in Soforishka Square, which features an angel in the blue and yellow colors of Ukraine. Similarly, Ukrainian soldiers are still managing to hold festive celebrations, though rather different ones this year. Photos shared by Ukraine's military show a group of soldiers talking into a festive meal, although it is not clear where they are located. More than 1 million Americans and Canadians are facing Christmas Day without power as a massive winter storm continues to pummel North America. A bomb cyclone has brought snow, strong winds, and freezing temperatures. Nearly 250 million are affected, and at least 19 deaths have been linked to the storm that extends more than 3,200 kilometers from Quebec to Texas. Thousands of flights have been cancelled during the festive period. In the United Kingdom, King Charles has attended a Christmas Day church service at Sandringham for the first time as monarch. The King and Camilla, the Queen Consort, are joined by the Prince and Princess of Wales, their children and other senior royals at the Norfolk estate. They waved to crowds who had gathered outside St. Mary Magdalene Church ahead of the service. It is the first time members of the royal family have spent Christmas at Sandringham House since 2019. The royal standard is flying above the house, marking a return to traditional royal festivities. In his first Christmas message released later, King Charles reflected on the cost of living crisis. He spoke of the great anxiety and hardship for those struggling to pay their bills and keep their families fed and warm.
I'm standing here in this exquisite chapel of St. George at Windsor Castle, so close to where my beloved mother, the late Queen, is laid to rest with my dear father. I am reminded of the deeply touching letters, cards, and messages which so many of you have sent my wife and myself, and I cannot thank you enough for the love and sympathy you have shown our whole family. Christmas is a particularly poignant time for all of us who have lost loved ones. We feel their absence at every familiar turn of the season and remember them in each cherished tradition. In the much-loved carol, O Little Town of Bethlehem, we sing of how in thy dark street shineth the everlasting light. My mother's belief in the power of that light was an essential part of her faith in God, but also her faith in people, and it is one which I share with my whole heart. It is a belief in the extraordinary ability of each person to touch with goodness and compassion the lives of others and to shine a light in the world around them.
Staying with the Christmas period, Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has hailed emergency service workers amidst tough times. In her Christmas message, she offered heartfelt thanks to workers who will be on duty providing vital services in the health, policing and fire services over the festive period. Delivering a message from her official residence at Bute House in Edinburgh, Ms. Sturgeon wished Scots the best possible Christmas following turbulent periods caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdowns. She acknowledged families who will be facing difficult times because of a cost of living crisis and urged people to help in whatever way they can.
Especially after the past two Christmases, I know most of us will be really looking forward to this festive period. The chance to gather with family, friends and loved ones really is something to cherish. Of course, the cost of living crisis is making this a very hard winter for many. So this Christmas, it's important for all of us to also think about how we can help others, maybe donating to charity if we can, or helping out in our communities, or visiting a neighbour or friend who might be on their own and want some support or company. I know many will already be doing exactly that, showing compassion and companionship and helping make the festive period that bit brighter for everyone. So thank you.
In another news, a murder investigation has been launched in the United Kingdom after a woman was fatally shot at a bar near Liverpool on Christmas Eve. Merseyside police officers were called to the Lighthouse Inn in Wallasey village. 3 men and the female victim were taken to hospital suffering gunshot wounds, but the woman later died. Police said the shooting happened at a busy venue full of young people. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back on Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now to the rest of the stories. 3 major non-governmental organizations have halted work in Afghanistan after women were banned from working for them by the Taliban. In a joint statement, CARE International, the Norwegian Refugee Council and Save the Children said they will be unable to continue their work without their female staff. The 8 groups are demanding that women can continue to work for them. Afghanistan's ruling Taliban have been steadily repressing women's rights. The latest edict on NGOs came just days after the Taliban banned women from attending university. Spokesman for the Taliban's Ministry of Economy, Abdel Rahman Habib, claimed female workers are the foreign aid groups had broken dress codes by not wearing hijabs. The leaders of CARE, the NRC and Save the Children said the organizations would not have jointly reached millions of Afghans in need since August 2021, were it not for their female staff. In the United States, a judge in the state of Arizona has rejected Republican candidate Kari Lake's effort to overturn the results of election laws in the state's governor race. In a decision, Superior Court Judge Peter Thompson said the court did not find clear and convincing evidence of the widespread misconduct that Ms. Lake had alleged had affected the result of the 2022 general election. The 53-year-old who lost to Democrat Katie Hobbs by more than 17,000 votes was amongst the most vocal 2022 Republicans promoting former President Donald Trump's election fraud claims. Ms. Lake said she was going to appeal the ruling. The Criminal Court of Maldives today found the country's former president, Abdullah Yameen, guilty on corruption and money laundering charges related to receiving kickbacks from a private company. The court said it expects to announce a sentence soon, but Yameen has denied any wrongdoing. Yameen, who lost power in 2018, was sentenced to 5 years in jail and fined $5 million in 2019 for embezzling $1 million in state funds, which the prosecution said was acquired through the lease of resort development rights. After his sentencing, he was shifted to house arrest in 2020, was freed months later. Since his release, Yameen, the half-brother of former dictator Maumoon Abdul Gayoom, has returned to active politics with a campaign against Indian influence in Maldives, raising concerns in New Delhi. He is the declared presidential candidate for the Progressive Party of the Maldives for an election due in 2023. Still in Asia, China's military today said it had conducted strike drills in the sea and airspace around Taiwan in response to unspecified provocation from the democratically governed island and the United States. Taiwan, which China claims is its own territory, has complained of repeated Chinese military activity nearby over the past 3 years, as Beijing seeks to pressure Taipei to accept Chinese sovereignty. China staged war games around Taiwan in August following a visit to Taipei by then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and yesterday it condemned the United States for a new defense authorization law that boosts military assistance for Taiwan. In a brief statement, the Eastern Theater Command of China's People's Liberation Army said it had carried out joint combat readiness patrols and joint firepower strike drills around Taiwan, though it did not specify the exact location. Taiwan's defense ministry declined immediate comment. China's National Health Commission today said it will no longer publish daily figures for COVID-19 cases and deaths, ending a practice that began in early 2020. Cities across China have struggled with surging infections and the resulting shortage of pharmaceuticals and overflowing hospital wards after Beijing rapidly dismantled its zero-COVID strategy. But the end of strict testing mandates has made caseloads virtually impossible to track, while authorities have narrowed the medical definition of a COVID death in a move experts say would suppress the number of fatalities attributable to the virus. The NHC said the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention will publish information about the outbreak for reference and research purposes without specifying the type or frequency of data to be published by the CDC. People in China who are seeing a large discrepancy between official statistics and infections within their families and social circles greeted the decision with skepticism. More than 50 people have been injured in an intercity coach crash in the province of British Columbia, Canada. British Columbia's Interior Health Authority has issued a code orange, meaning services are responding to a disaster or mass casualties. It is not known what caused the crash, which happened about 160 miles from the provincial capital, Victoria. 53 people were taken to hospital following the incident, but their conditions have not been disclosed by the local health authorities. Premier David Eby said he was shocked and saddened to hear of a serious incident. All railway services between Canada's two biggest cities, Toronto and Montreal, have been cancelled for Christmas Day after a train derailed in poor weather conditions. Elsewhere, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has come under fire for what critics called an excruciating exchange with a homeless man. In footage from his visit to a homeless shelter in London on Friday, the Prime Minister can be heard asking a man he's serving food to if he worked in business. The man, called Dean, then replied that he was homeless. Labour Deputy Leader Angela Rayner described it as excruciating. The awkward exchange began when the multimillionaire Prime Minister was serving breakfast to the homeless man, who asked him if he was sorting the economy out.
Morning. I'm all right. How are you? Yeah, that's right. Rishi, what's your name? Dean. Dean, how are you? Hungry? Well, we hope we get you some good breakfast. Thank you. Would you like sausages? Some toast? Yeah. Perfect. A couple of eggs? Yeah. Fantastic. Now, you've been here before, have you? I have, yeah. Yeah, it's a great place, isn't it? Yes. It's a superb job. Right, that's that. That's some cutlery. Let me get... We've got the economy out? Well, that is exactly what I'm trying to do. Exactly what I'm trying to do. There's the business. What do you have? Do you work in a business? Do you want some fruit?
I'm homeless, and I'm actually a homeless person, but I'm interested in business.
Yeah, what kind of business?
I like finance. It's good for the city, and when finance and stuff's doing well, we'll do well, don't we, in London? So
yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I used to work in finance, actually.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah. Ex-investment bank.
Yeah, well, I did for lots of different things, but you're right. Because I think the good thing now is it's not just London. If you look at all the jobs in finance around the UK, the majority of them are outside of London now. Yeah. So it's spread across the UK.
The law and the association.
Yeah. Is that something you'd like to get into?
I wouldn't mind. But I don't know. I'd like to get through Christmas first.
Yeah. What's the plan? What are you doing this weekend?
No idea. I'm hoping that the St Mungo's can help me get into some temporary accommodation, so I'm not on the street.
Ghana has further extended the deadline to register for its domestic debt exchange to January 16th in order to secure internal approvals from the financial sector. In a statement, the Finance Ministry also announced a change to the debt exchange with 8 additional instruments to be created. Ghana's government, in a bid to mitigate an economic crisis, has negotiated a staff-level agreement for a $3 billion loan package from the International Monetary Fund. The IMF has said its board will approve the deal only if Ghana undergoes comprehensive debt restructuring. Ghana announced a domestic debt exchange program earlier this month and said external restructuring was being negotiated with creditors. And out of sports, Brentford head coach Thomas Frank has signed a new contract with the club. It was only back in January that the 49-year-old agreed fresh terms on a deal until 2025. But given the way the Bees have started their second season in the Premier League, the board have opted to hand him another extension until the summer of 2027. Brentford sit 10th in the table after 4 wins and 7 draws from the 15 league games that preceded the World Cup break, and get back on the way when Tottenham travelled to the Czech Community Stadium on Boxing Day. Should he see out the contract in West London, Frank will pass a decade with the club, having first joined as one of 2 assistants to Dean Smith in December 2016, before being appointed head coach in his own right when Smith joined boyhood club Aston Villa in October 2018. As the football fans across the world celebrate Christmas, several English Premier League stars and coaches have delivered a festive message. The video message was tweeted today via the Premier League handle. It featured players including Manchester City striker Erling Haaland, West Ham's Mikel Antonio, and Everton midfielder Alex Iwobi, as well as Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag.
Hello, I'm Erling Haaland. I would like to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Wishing everyone around the world a Merry Christmas.
Ooh, 'tis the season to be jolly.
Oh, now, ready? Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Happy holidays and everyone at Nottingham Forest.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. That was hard.
Before we end the Spring Global, here's a recap of our top stories. Pope Francis has used his Christmas message to call for an end to the war in Ukraine, saying the world is suffering from a famine of peace. 3 major non-governmental organizations have halted work in Afghanistan after women were banned from working for them by the Taliban. The Criminal Court of Maldives today found the country's former president, Abdullah Yameen, guilty on corruption and money laundering charges related to receiving kickbacks from a private company. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Okwayemuni. Thanks for watching.